The infectious disease that we chose was rabies. We will be talking about a lot, but a few things include the transmission, the current statistics, signs and symptoms, and treatment and prevention. The first thing we will discuss is the scientific name, the disease caused by rabies, and the classification. The scientific name given to rabies is the rabies virus, but most people just refer to it as just rabies. Rabies is a viral disease and is classified as a virus. In figure 3, the image shows you what a virus in general looks like. The shape of rabies is a bullet shape seen in figure 1, and the size is roughly 180 nanomites long and 75 nanomites wide. Some side information is there's 5 main parts of rabies. The RNA virus that causes rabies is responsible for the disease. The arrangement of such proteins in the RNA gene dictated every structure of rabies virus.
Next thing we will discuss is the transmission of rabies. Rabies can be transferred in many different ways, but the most common type of way is through a bite from an animal containing this virus. You can also get this virus from an infected animal's saliva. But the saliva can enter any wounds or cuts that have been made on your body. Now we will be talking about who is most likely to be infected. Anyone can get rabies, but most common place is countryside. 4 shows you an image of what the countryside looks like. Not every countryside looks like that, but it's a good example.
The next thing we will talk about is the statistics of rabies. Rabies isn't a common virus, but it does happen every now and then. The government of Ontario stated in 2021 that there were 42 cases of rabies confirmed in Ontario. These statistics and maps of the areas can be found on the website included on the screen. This pie chart shows an example of the big brown bat rabies cases in Ontario during 2021. As this chart shows, rabies is uncommon when it comes to Ontario, as the most cases in the region are 2.
Two body systems that rabies affect are the central nervous system and your digestive system. It affects your central nervous system by taking over your nerves and going up into your brain. When rabies go into your brain, a few things can happen. Example, you can have seizures or go paralyzed. You can also become very confused and disorientated. Affects your digestive system by making either task of ingesting or speaking difficult.
Now we will speak about how rabies is diagnosed. Someone can be diagnosed in many different ways. One way is testing the animal that had bitten the person, but you'll find out later on why this isn't the easiest way. Some other ways to diagnose someone is skin biopsy, blood tests, head MRI, and CT scans. The 2 figures 6 and 7 show you what an MRI and CT scanner equipment looks like. There are many signs and symptoms when it comes to rabies. Some of the signs include aggression, paralysis, difficulty speaking, and a cough. There are numerous symptoms, but here are a few. You can experience a fever, headaches, sore throat, difficulty swallowing, and double vision. The next topic is where rabies can be found. Rabies can be found in any animal that contains the virus, but the most common animals are bats, raccoons, and skunks. Other types of animals that are more close with humans are dogs and cats. Especially when someone sees a stray cat or dog, they are more likely to approach it than if it was a stray raccoon. 3 images, 8, 9, and 10, show you an example of a bat, raccoon, and a skunk.
One of the last 2 things that we'll be talking about is treatment. There is no real cure for rabies, but there are shots that you can take. With there being no real treatment, the survival rate ends up being fairly low. The shot you will be given takes hold of rabies and tries to hinder it. The treatment consists of the first dose of vaccine and another protective injection. Then 4 more doses of vaccines are admitted over 28 days. The last thing we will discuss is the prevention of rabies. A few things you can do is make sure your animal gets their shot and try to get animals that aren't wild, animals that are meant to be house pets. If you see a stray, try and leave it alone because there's a very high chance that it contains rabies, especially if it's not scared of you and just walks up to you like your own pet would. Lastly, try and keep your yard clean and free of any garbage because you're less likely to get any raccoons, for example, looking for a snack. In Figure 11, it shows a dog receiving a shot, so the dog is less likely to get rabies and help spread it. It also helps save the dog's life because if it gets rabies, there's no cure for dogs. A few interesting facts to include are any warm blood animals can get and carry rabies. Once an animal gets rabies, it usually lasts up to 5 days before it dies. When rabies isn't affecting anything, it dies because it can't last longer than 5 seconds outside of the body. The last two things that I find very interesting is that rabies isn't found in the state of Hawaii, and the only way to find out if an animal has rabies is to look at the dead animal's brain tissue. This is why it's not easy to test the animal unless the animal is already dead.
In conclusion, rabies has no guaranteed treatment, so it makes it a very deadly virus. Rabies can happen to anyone and anywhere, but found mostly in the countryside. The countryside contains more animals, so that allows rabies to spread easier and faster. Rabies isn't particularly prevalent in Canada, with fewer than 100 cases reported each year. The best thing you can do is vaccinate your animals, stay away from strays, and make sure your yard is clean.
This is the references of all websites that were used, and these are the images references that were used throughout the presentation. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed our presentation.